DP holds off campaigns in protest against the suspension of the country's Chief Justice. And thousands gather to bid farewell to Zimbabwean legend Oliver Mtukudzi. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. Also on the program, the Africa Development Bank to fund a new program to help create 25 million jobs in Africa. And in sport, Egypt finished 8th in the men's handball world championships. Now, on our top story this hour, French President Emmanuel Macron is set to visit Egypt this Sunday in what will be the first visit of his presidency to the North African state. Now, the two countries enjoy long-standing diplomatic ties, as Adel Al-Mahri reports.
Cairo is welcoming a friendly European ally this week. French President Emmanuel Macron is paying his first official visit to Egypt. Both nations have been enjoying the warmest times in decades.
The most important element for France during this visit is to coordinate with Egypt its African strategy over the coming year, as Cairo will become the chair of the African Union this February. France is fond of extending relations and influence in Africa.
Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi will be discussing numerous issues that concerns Egypt's security. He will be trying to get more French support to the Libyan National Army, which is crucial to maintain stability at the Egyptian western border.
Everyone needs Egypt when it comes to Libya. There is a long border between the two countries. Therefore, Cairo has been invested in to maintain security in Libya, with clear support to Khalifa Haftar as a representative for all of Libya. There is a French-Italian race over influence in Libya specifically, and El-Sisi is definitely the person to talk to for such an approach.
Military cooperation between the two countries has been at its highest level. El-Sisi's plan to diversify sources of arms to the Egyptian army has depended largely on French weapons. An estimated $8 billion worth of arms sales has been signed during the past 5 years.
President El-Sisi has moved the French arms sales forward. He was the first to purchase and receive the Rafale fighter jets. Qatar and other countries started to buy them afterwards. Military ties have been boosted significantly under President El-Sisi's leadership.
As the military file seems to be somewhat saturated, no further deals are expected during Macron's visit this week. The prime focus in the bilateral ties will be more economic, with several business deals expected to be finalized when both presidents meet. This year, Egypt celebrates 150 years over the construction of the Suez Canal. Built by French engineers, the two countries have agreed to name 2019 France-Egypt Cultural Year. President Macron will be visiting ancient Egyptian archaeological sites to mark the beginning of these celebrations. Adel Al-Mahri, CGTN, Cairo.
Well, it's certainly a busy day for the Egyptian president. He'll also be hosting Sudan's Omar al-Bashir. And quite interestingly, of course, both Presidents al-Bashir and Macron are facing protests back home. But it seems that at least for today, their focus is on Egypt. Adel Al-Mahri is following these key visits for us in Egypt and joins us now live from Cairo. Adel, of course, as we know, Sudan's Omar al-Bashir expected to arrive first in Egypt. Has he landed in Cairo, and what is on the agenda for his meeting with President El-Sisi?
Well, still waiting for President al-Bashir to officially meet the Egyptian president. He is coming here, according to several analysts, is mainly for the political situation that is ongoing, the economic rights that have been spreading in the country. President al-Bashir has been quite focused on to get Gulf support. He has visited Qatar, and he's looking forward for the Egyptian side to get support from Saudi Arabia, from UAE, to give financial support to Sudan. He's not facing political challenges as much as President al-Bashir is facing a way to cross over this economic rift and start to provide for the demands of these citizens who took the streets asking to lift the pressure of the economic situation over them.
And of course, Macron also expected later today. When is his visit scheduled to happen, and what key issues might they discuss?
President Macron is expected to come later today. He will be coming to Cairo, where he's expected to be welcomed by the Egyptian president. He will then fly to the southern part of Egypt, specifically in Abu Simbel area, to sightsee some of ancient Egypt's archaeological sites. 2019 has been named the Year of Egypt-France Cultural Year, as both countries celebrate 150 years over the construction of the Suez Canal. Afterwards, he will continue the state and official visits. There are several expectations that numerous economic deals will be signed. He will be meeting business delegations from representatives here in Egypt, as well as taking discussions with the foreign minister, the president himself, of course, and the chief of intelligence on regional issues. President Macron is expected to stay in Egypt for 3 days.
And of course, these meetings may very well set the tone for Egypt's foreign policy in the year ahead. Just what is in it with these visits for Egypt from these two diplomatic visits this Sunday?
Well, in a way, Lindy, it's quite a reinforcement statement from the leader of two nations, Sudan, one of the biggest countries in Africa, and of course France, that there is confidence in Egypt's role and influence in the region. There is confidence that Egypt can look after and has the power to look for the benefits for these two nations in Africa, whether it's domestically, like for President Omar al-Bashir, or on an African and Middle Eastern level, as for the French interests in the region. They come, of course, on the same day. It's more or less a chance. There isn't, at least most analysts are not expecting that there is an interest from President al-Bashir to have any coordination or any assistance from France via Egypt. But the main focus for President al-Bashir is to get Arab support. He's not looking into any sort of global support or any relief on the international sanctions imposed on Sudan. He's more or less concerned much more with the domestic situation.
Well, thank you so much for that update. Adel Al-Makhraoui joining us there live from Cairo. Now, Elena Casas, reporting, of course, from Paris, says the trip aims to strengthen ties between the two countries and commemorate the 150th anniversary of the Suez Canal opening. It is Macron's first visit to the North African state.
President Macron aims to sign various business and defence contracts. Much of the focus is on whether the Egyptian government decides to follow through with the 2015 arms deal, giving it the option to buy 12 Rafale military planes from France in a significant deal for the French armaments industry. That sale was held up by objections from Washington and is opposed by human rights groups who say France must stop selling arms to Egypt. The French presidency now says they don't expect that contract to be signed during this visit. The previous French president, François Hollande, came under fire for continuing to sell arms to Egypt while ignoring human rights questions, and Macron doesn't want to be seen as going down the same road. When the two men last met here in Paris in October 2017, Macron gave the Egyptian president a list of names of activists he thought should be released from prison. He's now under pressure to keep up that hard line on human rights without upsetting Sisi too much. The French presidency has sent to the Egyptian government a list of human rights questions they hope it will find it hard to dismiss. The visit comes as France's role in Africa has come under criticism lately, notably in a row between the French and Italian governments, sparked when the Italian Deputy Prime Minister Luigi Di Maio accused France of continuing to play a colonial role in the region. Elena Casas, CGTN, Paris.
Now, meanwhile, Saudi Arabia has pledged to help Sudan overcome the biting economic challenges that it's experiencing. This was agreed on during a meeting between President Omar al-Bashir and a visiting Saudi delegation. The delegates were sent by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The two nations have also agreed to strengthen economic and diplomatic ties that have been in existence for decades. The meeting comes amid deadly protests that continue to rock the North African nation, which have led to several deaths. President al-Bashir last week visited the neighboring Saudi Arabia, where he held talks with King Salman and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The arrival of the Saudi delegation in Khartoum is a follow-up on issues discussed between al-Bashir and Saudi leadership.
The custodian of two holy mosques affirmed that the security of the Sudan is very important to the security of the kingdom, and the Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir has a personal relationship with the custodian of the two holy mosques and the Crown Prince. There are many ways that can be explored to help Sudan. This is a way of appreciating Sudan's warm ties with the kingdom.
Now, reports of tension between Cairo and Gaza's ruling group, Hamas, have been circulating this week. The Egyptian General Intelligence has reportedly given the leaders of the Palestinian group an ultimatum to either keep connections with Iran or lose Egypt's support to the Strip. Here's Adel Al-Makhri with more.
The report circulating about an Egyptian ultimatum given to Palestinian group Hamas has not been officially confirmed. One report from a single Israeli news source claims that Egypt is pushing Hamas to cut following what it named as Iranian instructions in Gaza. Further claims were made stating that the Egyptian General Intelligence Agency, led by General Abbas Kamel, has held Hamas responsible for the re-emergence of violence on the fenced border with the Israeli side. Accordingly, Cairo threatened to step away from further efforts of brokering a ceasefire. Neither Egypt nor Hamas has confirmed these claims, which only cites an unnamed Egyptian intelligence official. Cairo has never publicly criticized Iran for any role in Gaza Strip. Egypt believes in its historic role to broker peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis. It seems unlikely that officials here would back from lifting any form of suffering from the Palestinian people. Israel has been holding back about $15 million of Qatari aid to Gaza. Because of the tension with Hamas, the Palestinian Authority has refused to pass on the funds, leaving it to Israel. Cairo has cut diplomatic ties with Qatar and therefore has refused to interfere in this issue. Adel Al-Makhri, CGTN, Cairo.
German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier is set to make a 4-day official visit to Ethiopia. President Steinmeier will hold bilateral meetings with Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and President Sahle Work Zewde, as well as the chairperson of the African Union Commission, among other officials. CGTN's Gurum Chala has more.
It will be the second time for Germany's President Frank-Walter Steinmeier to come to Ethiopia. He was here back in 2014 in his capacity as Foreign Minister of Germany. Now he'll be back to the country to see a different political landscape compared to 5 years ago. According to source, the president will come here to express Germany's solidarity with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government and its ongoing reform. According to the visit schedule, President Steinmeier alongside Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed will meet President Sahle Work Zewde, African Union Commission Chairperson Musa Faki Mahamat, and civil society representatives in the country. When answering for DW as to why he chose this time to head to Ethiopia, President Steinmeier said, and I quote, "It's crucial not only to honor from afar the courage of these chains in favor of democracy in Ethiopia, but as a European and German to also be there on the ground to encourage the journey along with this path. That's why it's the right time for me to visit Ethiopia." End of quote. Grumjara CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
And let's now head to Tunisia, where Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has arrived for a 2-day visit at the invitation of his Tunisian counterpart. Stability in Libya and the return of Syria to the Arab League were discussed during the meetings. The Arab League suspended Syria's membership in November 2011 amid the civil war that has since engulfed the country. CGTN's Adnan Chouachi has more.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov was received by Tunisian President Bashir in Calfage Palace. Lavrov noted that Russia and Tunisia have agreed to increase and reinforce cooperation on counter-terrorism efforts. The situation in Libya was on the agenda of the meeting.
Many problems remain in Libya, including the terrorism concern that Tunisia is also struggling from. Today, we agreed to boost our anti-terrorism cooperation, both within the United Nations and through bilateral ties.
Lavrov noted that Russia is urging Tunisia to support the process of Syria's returning to the League of Arab States.
As we discussed both in Algeria and in Morocco over the past few days, we would like Tunisia to support the process of Syria's return to the Arab family, to the League of Arab States as well. More so, as another Arab League summit will be held here in March.
Tunisian Foreign Minister Ahmed Jhinewi said that the return or the non-return of Syria to the Arab League is not a Tunisian decision.
It's a decision of the Arab League, which decided in 2011 to suspend Syria's membership from the League and all Arab institutions. The Arab Summit will be held on the 31st of March. Arab foreign ministers will decide whatever they want concerning Syria. Tunisia's security, sovereignty and territorial integrity is what matters to Tunisia.
According to Lavrov, Moscow appreciates Tunisia's support regarding Russian efforts with the Astana format to promote the Syrian settlement.
Sergei Lavrov said that he believed that Tunis is interested in a quick return of Syrian refugees sheltered in the North African state. The Russian official declared that Moscow will do everything to create proper conditions in Syria for that kind of return. Aden Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Well, time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. 2 injured after an improvised explosive device goes off in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. And Nigeria's main opposition holds off campaigns and protests against the suspension of the country's Chief Justice.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice. My home country lies at the foot of Africa, the southernmost tip of our beautiful continent and the unique point at which 2 great oceans meet. Now on a clear day in Cape Town, you can just make out Robben Island, the place where Nelson Mandela was jailed for so long. South Africa has changed so much in the years since then, but it is this country's history that shaped me and took me into reporting. I'm inspired by Africa's men and women of courage. It's the everyday hero who brings out my passion. The creatives, the decision makers, the risk takers who are shaping a bright African future. I see them in Cape Town. I see them in the pulsating city of Johannesburg. I see them across the continent, and I know our time has come.
CGTN is a platform where African voices can speak for themselves and take their stories to the world. My name is Lindy Mtongana, and I'm a news anchor and reporter for CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Now, 2 people have been injured in Nairobi, Kenya, after a blast occurred in the central business district. The country's regional police commander says a roadside vendor was given a small box to transport by an unidentified man. The box then exploded minutes later. This comes after Islamist militant group Al-Shabaab carried out an attack in an almost 20-hour siege just 2 weeks ago at a popular hotel in the capital. The attack involved a suicide bomber and 4 gunmen who were all killed by security forces. 21 people lost their lives in that incident and 30 others were injured.
One trolley puller by the name Joseph Okinyi was hired by a Somali gentleman to carry a small box. The gentleman pretended to have forgotten his ID, therefore requested the gentleman to stop there, Okinyi to stop there, so that he can dash back to get his ID. It is when Okinyi was still standing there that the box that he was carrying exploded. After the explosion, Okinyi suffered some slight injuries on his right hand, while a newspaper vendor who was just nearby suffered some slight injuries on his right leg.
Nigeria's main opposition party, the PDP, is now protesting the suspension of the country's Chief Justice, Walter Onnoghen. The party has halted campaigns for 72 hours to show its displeasure at the president's decision. President Muhammadu Buhari announced Chief Justice Onnoghen's suspension on Friday and asked that he appear before a tribunal over allegations that he breached asset declaration rules. The senior judge helped resolve past electoral disputes, and his suspension is being viewed by the opposition as a plan by the ruling party to rig the February 16 elections. Earlier, Nigerian President Buhari suspended the embattled Chief Justice, and that was just a day after a court of appeal ruled against his trial by the Code of Conduct Tribunal. The Chief Justice has been accused of under-declaring his personal wealth, contrary to mandatory requirements for public servants. Here's more from CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam.
The decision to suspend the Chief Justice is a bold one from President Muhammadu Buhari, more so after the Industrial Court, the High Court and the Court of Appeal all ruled against his trial by the Code of Conduct Tribunal. Immediately after the suspension of the Chief Justice, another member of the Supreme Court, Justice Ibrahim Tanko Mohammed, was sworn in. The trial of Justice Onnoghen has quickly turned very divisive. Nigeria's Bar Association has described it as a coup against the judiciary. Militants from oil-rich Niger Delta, where Justice Onnoghen comes from, have threatened to resume attacks on Nigeria's oil pipelines. And a coalition of political parties have dismissed the trial of Justice Onnoghen as an attempt to remove an impartial Chief Justice ahead of elections whose outcomes could be contested in court. President Buhari is seeking re-election in a tight contest with main opposition candidate Atiku Abubakar. Justice Onnoghen's accounts have been frozen under directives from the government. It's unclear if his trial in the Code of Conduct Tribunal will continue as scheduled next week. Kelechi Mekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Cameroonians have voiced their opinions on the country's leadership, the Anglophone separatist crisis, and a decision by the African Football Confederation to strip Cameroon of its rights to host the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations football tournament. Demonstrators carried banners and chanted slogans with messages of freedom and peace. More than 20 people have reportedly been detained. Cameroon was stripped of its hosting rights last year by the Confederation of African Football after serious delays with its progress and preparations, and in the midst of a violent separatist rebellion near 2 of the planned venues. Let's go to Algeria now, where the main Islamist party, the Movement for the Society of Peace, has declared its intention to participate in the country's upcoming polls scheduled for April. Now, it's named Abderrazak Makri as the party's presidential candidate. And since being elected as the new head, Makri had vowed to vie for office. Algeria's incumbent president, Abdelaziz Bouteflika, has been in office for almost 2 decades, but has been out of the limelight since falling ill in 2015. He's yet to openly declare his intention to run for a 5th term in office, despite the 4th of March deadline requiring candidates to register.
The president of the movement, Abderrazak Makri, is going to be the candidate of the National Consensus, candidate of Algerian Swad, candidate of the Search for the Solutions for Algerians, the candidate of the Research of Economic and Social Opinions, which reunite the Algerians, to prevent our country to fall into the great dangers that threaten it.
And let's go to South Africa now, where voter registration ahead of this year's general election is in full swing at polling stations across the country. This weekend is the last opportunity for eligible voters to register themselves for the May poll. Now, political party leaders are crisscrossing the country to ensure that their supporters register to vote. CGTN's Yulisa Jamela has more.
At least 22,925 voting stations are open this weekend for voters to register and update their details. The Independent Electoral Commission has urged South Africans who are eligible to vote to use this final opening of voting stations to register for the upcoming national and provincial elections. Political parties are out and about. They are on an intensive voter registration drive through visits to various communities.
We are asking our people to go and register, in particular the young people, our youth, because the voters' roll in South Africa, it runs short of young people who needs to register, because almost 8 million of our people who are supposed to be in the voters' roll are not there. For instance, the voters' roll currently, it stands at 26 million, when the actual target according to State South Africa is 34 million. So it means about 8 million people are not in the voters' roll, in particular young people who are less than 40 years.
Young people are the people that we can't address them in crowd. So we use every platform that we get to talk to young people. Young people, you can talk to them in your street. Young people, you can talk to them through their social media.
Potential voters have come out in their numbers.
It's important for us to vote so we can say whether the change is what we want, because we want jobs, we want employment.
It's extremely important to have a voice, so registering to vote is really key. Very important to vote because we're fighting for our rights so that we can have a voice here in South Africa. Voting is critical. When we register, we make sure your name is there. If we register and vote, then the government knows how many people stay in the community, for instance, so they can give us proper services.
The 2019 elections are expected to be hotly contested.
The 2019 national general elections are especially important for the governing African National Congress. The party lost some major metros to the opposition parties in the local elections of 2016.
We are confident as the African National Congress that our people still have trust in the ANC. They still regard the ANC as their hope. They still take the ANC as their legitimate government. We are confident that if we humble ourselves as the ANC, if we work very hard, if we accept our mistakes and challenges, if we work towards correcting them, our people are going to give the African National Congress another mandate to lead them.
More people are expected to flock into registration stations on Sunday. Listen Jamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, let's return now to Nigeria, a story that we are following closely there. On Friday, the country's President Muhammadu Buhari announced the suspension of the country's Chief Justice Onogen. And in response to that, the main opposition party, the PDP, has decided to not engage in any campaigning for elections for the next 72 hours. Let's bring you more on this now. Martin Obono, a political and public affairs analyst, joins us live from Abuja, Nigeria, with some insights. Mr. Obono, clearly something of a standoff between the ruling party, the president, and the opposition party. Just talk us through the reasons for the suspension of Onogen and the key reasons for the opposition's unhappiness with this decision.
The suspension of the CJN is very illegal, and it contradicts the constitutional provisions of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended. And so everybody who has the interest of democracy in Nigeria and the world at large would definitely not support that kind of move, because the president did not follow the procedures. It laid down procedures for suspending or removing a Chief Justice of the Federation. And the timing also is very, very wrong, because we are just almost 22 days to the general elections. And removing a Chief Justice of the Federation also hampers and shows that the presidency or the president also has ulterior motives towards the 2019 elections, because just yesterday, the new acting Chief Justice of the Federation swore in 250 judges who are going to be in the tribunal for elections. So everybody knows that the timing was wrong, because it has a lot of political undertone. And so the opposition party, knowing well that they are looking forward to getting power, are also not sure of the fact that even if the elections goes the other way and they go to the courts, there will be no justice given to them in the election tribunal. And that is why everybody, the opposition parties, are coming together to say, we cannot take this and we want the decision reversed.
Well, certainly a situation that needs to be watched closely. Thank you so much, Martin Obono, for that analysis, joining us there from Nigeria. Now, let's turn to news from Zimbabwe. Thousands have gathered in Madziva village, where legendary musician Oliver Mtukudzi's funeral is underway. Earlier, President Emmerson Mnangagwa declared Mtukudzi a national hero. The family of the late singer turned down calls to have him buried in the Heroes Acre National Shrine, saying that the Afro-jazz singer had preferred to be buried amongst his ancestors in the village. Before arrival in Madziva, Mtukudzi's body was transported to the National Arts Stadium, where local artists staged a concert in his honor.
At Oliver's funeral, I have seen leaders of different political parties paying their last respects, as well as church leaders, and this shows that Oliver was a unifier.
He was an entertainer. He almost entertained everyone. Even little children, they are very saddened by his passing on.
The reason why I'm here is for me to celebrate the life of our legend, our living legend, Dr. Oliver Mtukudzi. He is our inspiration.
Angola's parliament has decriminalized homosexuality and banned discrimination based on sexual orientation. 155 parliamentarians voted for Angola's first overhaul of the criminal statute book since independence, while 7 abstained and 1 voted against. The new law aims to shore up protection against sexual discrimination. Those found guilty of discriminating against anyone from the LGBTQ community will be liable to a jail term of up to 2 years. Well, time now for a short break. Your business news up next. Coming up, the African Development Bank to fund a new program to help create 25 million jobs across Africa. And Egypt opens a new international airport near the Giza pyramids.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
In your business news, African Development Bank President Akinwumi Adesina has announced that his organization will be funding a new program to help create 25 million jobs for many African countries, including Tunisia. Now, a Tunisian delegation in Davos, led by the country's premier, discussed major economic advances and challenges that have been made by the North African state. Here's Adnan Chouachi with more.
Tunisian Prime Minister Youssef Al-Shahed took part in the 49th World Economic Forum in Davos. Al-Shahed had several meetings with world leaders, key economic decision makers and representatives of international financial institutions. The African Development Bank president emphasized that Tunisia plays a key role in the AFDB strategy.
Tunisia will feature among African countries that will benefit from an ambitious program to be launched by the African Development Bank, AFDB, to create nearly 25 million jobs for African youth over the next 10 years.
Adesina affirmed the institution's willingness to achieve several investments in Tunisia, notably in the infrastructure, employment, social integration, development of financial market and macroeconomic stability fields to better attract investments.
The cooperation established between the bank and Tunisia is directed in particular to the areas of infrastructure development, social investment, capturing foreign markets and creation of new jobs for young people.
The Tunisian premier attended a conference entitled The Development of the African Agenda in light of the global economic situation.
Tunisia has a huge potential in human competences. This African meeting in Davos is important in reinforcing Tunisia's position as a development platform of the triangular investment with Europe, America and Asia.
Economists noted that the GDP's growth in African countries reached an average of 4% in 2018, against forecasts of 4.1% in 2019. This rate varies from one country to another, exceeding 5% in 17 African states and between 3% and 5% in 21 countries, which reflects an upward trend and a stability in the continent.
The president of the African Development Bank affirmed during his meeting with Youssef Al-Shahed in Davos that he intends to visit Tunisia in March 2019 to inaugurate the AFDB North Africa regional headquarters. The official laid emphasis on the progress achieved in Africa and the change taking place at the level of its economic landscape. Adnan Chouachi, CGTN, Tunis.
Egypt has opened a new international airport. It is in a bid to ease pressure from Cairo's main airport and help boost tourism. The Sphinx International Airport is located near the Giza Pyramids and the new Grand Egyptian Museum. It is expected to operate 30 flights by early February during what will be a trial run. The $17 million project comes as part of the Tourism Ministry's plans to improve accessibility to historical sites from resort areas on the Red Sea like Sharm el-Sheikh and Hurghada. It will be fully open by 2020.
To tell you the truth, the second option to go to Cairo. We were going to Cairo actually, and there was no flight during the day, so we took this flight. Now we're going to take a taxi to Cairo. So that was the main reason why we took it, and it's a good option that there's another airport.
We'll have made a name for ourselves by the year 2020, which will coincide with the opening of the Grand Egyptian Museum and the development around the pyramids area. I believe the airport and the nearby area will be a tourist base for the years to come.
The back and forth continues over Britain's departure from the European Union with no clear answer. The debate is not only straining politicians but also families. Richard Bestick reports that 2.5 years of anxiety are now taking their toll.
Scuffles and mass brawls linked to Brexit are on the rise in Britain, while members of Parliament are routinely confronted by angry protesters on the street. Here, Anna Soubry from the UK's ruling Conservative Party is called a Nazi by protesters at odds with her pro-European message. Their argument, blunt, loud and in your face.
How much more of an answer do you want? Let's get out.
The divisions run through Parliament, the people and even family life.
There's deep divisions, I could say divisions, and people arguing a lot.
We're divided for decades.
There are some divergent views, yes, and that's called democracy.
Some families will fall out quite dramatically once Brexit is brought up.
Data produced by the international dating agency eHarmony suggests that rows over Brexit have ended more than 1.5 million relationships across the UK since the country voted to leave the European Union in 2016. Rachel Lloyd, a relations expert for eHarmony, says Brexit can be a cause for copious family rows.
People are really angry out there. I think that they're also pretty confused. I mean, it is a confusing issue. There seems to be a story about Brexit and different variations on the Brexit theme every day. And one thing that we found with politics is during times of uncertainty, it does have an impact on love and relationships.
When arguing against a second referendum to break Parliament's Brexit deadlock, UK Prime Minister Theresa May talks of strains to social cohesion. Even the UK's Queen Elizabeth, famously apolitical, is reported to have sent out a coded Brexit message. In a speech to Britain's Women's Institute, she called on a feuding country to find common ground.
It's very difficult to see how the divisions in Britain can be healed even with a second referendum.
Didn't you pay no?
There will always be those making arguments on either side, and at the moment at least, little attempt at compromise. Richard Bestick, CGTN, London.
And another business news, Apple's smart speaker known as the HomePod is finally available through formal retail channels in China. However, the product is relatively pricey compared to domestic rivals. So will Apple be able to survive the fierce competition for the smart device market in China? CGTN's MiGi explores that idea.
Apple had announced that Chinese customers could start ordering the HomePod on January 18th, setting the price of the smart speakers at 2,799 yuan, roughly $410. But so far, other than Apple shops, the big retailers don't seem to have the HomePod available yet. The market is there, though. We visited one store in Pudong where they told us customers' interest in smart speakers has been growing.
We think smart speakers are going to be the way to go for home appliance retail. Our data show that sales of smart speakers, both online and offline, was up 160% in 2019 from 2017. Most of the customers buy it because they have smart home appliances already, and they want something to control them all.
But Zhou told us that most popular products are priced at less than 1,000 yuan. Popular ones included products from Alibaba, Xiaomi, Huawei, and Baidu. One of the most popular functions is voice control. Baidu, for one, told us it has invested heavily in conversational AI technology for its smart speakers. It teamed up with Shimao Group and installed its smart speakers in all the rooms in one of its hotels in Shanghai.
And the people love it. They can control the light, they can open the window, they can turn on TV, they can do a lot of stuff using voice.
Like many other domestic brands, Baidu has also kept the price of its smart speaker within 1,000 yuan, or $140. That has resulted in a huge price gap between these products and Apple's HomePod. Apple says its HomePod offers good voice recognition features and has a nice sound quality, part of the reason for its high price. So, do customers like it? We've asked around.
If it can control the lights, even locks, and help me set a timer for my stove and turn it off when I walk away, I'd buy one even it's over 2,000 yuan.
I won't consider buying one because you can also use your mobile phone for things like that. I don't really have that much time for listening to music at home.
Industry analysts say the high price of the HomePod is a challenge for Apple, as its research shows that half of the consumers of emergent tech products are very price sensitive. But things are not all going silent for Apple, because the market potential is still huge.
Only 1/3 of consumers have bought smart speakers, so I think there is still a long way for brands to educate consumers about the concept of smart home ecosystem, so still also opportunity for Apple.
It's estimated that Chinese customers bought nearly 1/3 of all smart speakers sold in the world in 2018. 米佳怡, ICS for CGTN, Shanghai.
Well, that is where we leave your business news. Here's what's still ahead on the program. The Chinese New Year is fast approaching. We take a look at how various cities in China are preparing.
Join us from Global Business, see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Tanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
An artistic performance by the National Inner Mongolian Art Theatre is a much awaited performance in Tunisia this year. It's a way of commemorating the 55th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between Tunisia and China. Adnan Chouachi has more.
The National Inner Mongolian Art Theatre performed an extraordinary show at the prestigious Culture City in downtown Tunis to celebrate the 55th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between Tunisia and China.
The National Inner Mongolian Art Theatre is happy to promote Chinese culture in Tunisia as well as cultural exchange between China and Tunisia. Tunisian public is very hospitable.
The Chinese ambassador to Tunisia noted that the cultural event aims to present one of the aspects of the rich and diverse Chinese cultures to the Tunisian public.
The National Inner Mongolian Art Theatre show is part of the Spring Festival and the New Year celebrations. Artistic performances are planned in Tunisia to send best wishes for a good year full of prosperity and happiness.
Tunisian Culture Minister said that art, cultural exchange and dialogue are among the projects of the ambitious Belt and Road Initiative.
China is a distinguished partner in all fields. The extraordinary show by the National Inner Mongolian Art Theatre shows that the Belt and Road Initiative is not only an economic project, it's also a human experience of art, beauty and shared values between China and the world.
The National Inner Mongolian Art Theatre has 9 troops, 918 regular staff, including 297 senior and deputy senior professionals.
Several artistic performances and shows will be organized by the Chinese Embassy and the Tunisian Ministry of Culture to celebrate the 55th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries. The project also aims to strengthen political and cultural ties between Tunis and Beijing. Adnan Chouachi, CGTN, Tunis.
As the Chinese New Year approaches, cities all over the country are full of festive cheer. Let's take a look.
Things you have to do during the Spring Festival. Hang around in an open fair, taste unique local food, and make special purchases for the holiday. In the coastal city of Qingdao, red lanterns, Chinese knots, and other lucky ornaments are attracting buyers.
They carry blessings for an auspicious new year. Consumers like that.
For citizens in Zhenjiang, a unique custom involves soy sauce, an essential ingredient in their kitchen. Authorities have prepared 300 tons of freshly brewed soy sauce ahead of the festival. Big tanks laid out in a row where citizens line up to buy the condiment.
This is a habit piled up over the years. It feels like a spring festival.
Turning to the ancient town of Lingyang, a New Year reunion banquet brings together neighboring families. The traditional dish consists of mushrooms, bean curd, meatballs, and other local food.
Sharing food in the same cauldron indicates a harmonious and happy New Year.
While food is a necessity, cultural events also can't be absent. In Xinjiang, villagers are holding their special Spring Festival Gala. A cadre team from southern Fujian province taught them a song in the southern Fujian dialect. Bang Duxuan, CGTN.
And here's what's coming up in your sports news up next. Egypt finished 8th in the Men's Handball World Championships following a 36-31 loss to Spain.
Africa, where champions are made, records